At some point in our lives, it is likely that we are assigned to deliver presentations. It could be for a school project or a business proposal or for whatever reason. But one thing is for sure, this is not an easy task, and I know that you can all relate to that. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Matt, and for today, we are going to talk about presentation skills. Just like in my first episode when we talked about hosting, delivering a presentation is yet another anxiety inducing activity. And yes, let's face it, it's once again public speaking, you standing in front of a number of people and all of them looking at you. So technically, we call this glossophobia, or the fear of public speaking. But just like hosting, there are ways as to how we can avoid being devoured by our fear and be able to deliver at our best. Now, presentations may vary. Again, it depends on the purpose. It depends on the material. And again, it could be for a school project or a business proposal. But nevertheless, there are some rules that we can actually remember that can be universally applied in whatever situation you are in. So for today, allow me to share some tips on how you can be an effective presenter. First, start with a strong introduction. Now, for most people, the first part really is the most difficult. And yes, I do agree. Because that's the phase that you are expected to create a good first impression. And there are a lot of important things that you should consider at the onset of your presentation. First, you have to create a solid foundation. And when we say solid foundation, it's basically driven by your objectives. So, why are you there in the first place? Why do the members of the audience need to listen to you? What's your goal at the end of the day? Now, clearly explaining what the objectives are can help your audience set the right expectations as well. And it's important that you both are on the same page before you even begin. Second, it's the face that you also need to set that character, to show that character with confidence that you are there and you're about to make a huge difference. Wow, that's quite ambitious and bold, but so be it. Think of it that way. It might just inspire you more. Third, if you also have some reminders or rules that you want to highlight or explain, take that opportunity as well during the first part of your presentation. Are there house rules that you want to set? How about Q&A? When can they ask questions? Because it's better if it's clear for the audience as well. Like, can they interrupt you anytime and ask you random questions? Or will there be a Q&A portion towards the end of the presentation? Tip number 2, analyze your audience. Why are you doing this presentation? Because we have to remember that the presentation is not just about ourselves, not just about the presenter, not just about how the presenter will look confident in front. It's about how the audience will benefit from it. You have to have that generous mindset, so to speak, so that you can put yourselves in the shoes of your audience and that it will be easier for you to know the right approach that they will appreciate. Will there be managers or supervisors or stakeholders, customers, or your professors, right? You need to know who they are. So you will also know how you will project yourself. Tip number 3, demonstrate mastery and passion. Now remember, when you're the one standing in front of everyone, it is expected that you have that mastery of the subject matter. And that basically means you have to know what you're talking about. It's as simple as that. Because when you know what you're talking about, everything else just smoothly follows. You can easily discuss all the topics across the entire presentation with ease. You can answer questions no matter how difficult they are. And yes, inevitably or in the real world, there really are questions that are so difficult to answer. But that is also connected to one of the important skills that I want to highlight as well. Like, do you know how to anticipate prior to the start of your presentation? And when you anticipate, it's always about the question, what can and what will go wrong? And it's not just about your delivery. It's also about how you respond to your audience. Like, what questions could be asked if I discuss these topics? So, having that kind of mindset will help you prepare. And when you say passion, it's all about that excitement, that enthusiasm, that confidence that you have while you deliver your presentation. And that can only be achieved if you know how to use your nonverbal cues properly. Like, how do you engage your audience through your powerful eye contact? How do you use your hands to emphasize your points? How do you maintain a good posture to establish authority? How about the way you speak? Your tone or your character, the use of intonation, pitch, rate, volume, all these things. How are you able to create an impact with the manner of your speaking? There are certain specific techniques that you might also want to consider, including the power of pause. Remember that the power of pause is necessary for the audience to fully digest the information you're trying to convey. Especially if there are some complicated technical terms, you might want to give them that opportunity to fully understand it. And again, that will only happen if you know when to pause strategically. Tip number 4, keep it simple. Now, it really depends on the amount of information that you need to include in your presentation. But nevertheless, if we can keep everything as simple as possible, then let's do it. We have to consider the audience here. Like, how much information can they take? Like, if you were in the shoes of your audience, how much can you take? And by keeping it simple, it basically involves everything in the equation, including the actual presentation or the deck that you're using. Now, I know that creating a presentation deck may need another episode because it really is quite complicated and there are a lot of rules, but if I may share some basic tips, then these would be: first, avoid text-heavy slides. And I know that this is already a common tip, but really, it helps a lot for you to become a better presenter. Now, what you put on your deck are keywords, key ideas, technical terms that they need to remember. But when it comes to explaining these ideas, it's all up to you. That's why you're there. You are the presenter, and you can verbally explain what these key ideas are. Next is, make it as visual as possible. I mean, that's why you're using a presentation deck, right? It's for visual purposes. But making all the elements visual as well can actually help. Like putting images or embedding videos to reinforce your message, or using some visual aids like graphs or charts or tables to easily explain data. Believe me, the audience will like it. Tip number 5. After starting with a strong introduction, remember that you have to end with a bang. And this can be done by revisiting the objectives that was set during the first part of the presentation. Make them realize at the end of the presentation that you're able to achieve all these goals. Because that realization will satisfy them and will make them think that the presentation was good. Now, if the situation will allow it, I'm not sure if you can also use this technique that I've been using for so many years. But how I end my presentation every time is I use quotes. And of course, these quotes are connected to the topic. But again, only if you think it's appropriate. And of course, don't forget to thank them for being there. Because a presentation wouldn't even be successful without their participation. And last tip number 6, practice, practice, practice. You know what they say, practice makes perfect. And yes, still it holds true. Why? Because there are a lot of benefits. First, you can observe yourself and see areas that you can still improve. Second, you will also be able to realize the possible risks and problems that you might encounter along the way. Like you will realize that you might want to add or subtract information for it to be more effective. You might be able to anticipate questions and prepare how you can effectively answer. And you'll also be able to practice within the expected duration. Let's say you're given only 1 hour to present, but when you delivered it the first time you practiced, it took you roughly 2 hours. And because of that, you were able to do something about it and to shorten it. Now, there are a lot of other tips out there when it comes to delivering good presentations. Remember that delivering effective presentations is an acquired skill. You need a lot of exposure and experience for you to enhance this skill. But believe me, the moment you realize that you already have that confidence in you, standing in front of all these people is actually one of the most rewarding experiences ever. So go ahead and make them proud. Make yourself proud. And let me end by sharing this quote by Robert Brown. If you can speak, you can influence. If you can influence, you can change lives. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.